Hi, folks, and as I'm recording this, it's just a few days after the Boston Marathon. In fact, I've got my Boston shirt on. And just before the Boston Marathon, I received a wonderful gift. I got this new book by Deena called Let Your Mind Run. I've even got it, I don't know exactly what it is, autographed by her at a book signing. I'm only a little bit into the book, so first of all, I'll tell you I highly recommend the book. From the little bit I've read, it is an excellent book. And in the beginning, Deena starts talking about back in the very early days when she was in high school and college about running with fear. Now, I'm not exactly sure yet what she means about running with fear, and as I get into the book, it might be a little bit different than what I'm talking about today. But reflecting back on Boston and some of my other races, I've kind of come to a conclusion, and that is that I run, it should probably say race, but I run with fear, and I don't think that's a good thing. So this is almost my way of publicly saying, hey, I run with fear and I don't want to do that anymore, so kind of hold me accountable. So what does that mean? It means that I race not to achieve success, I race to avoid failing. And there's a big difference between racing to be as good as you can versus racing to avoid failing. So why do I do that? So I can tell you, I've had, at every race distance out there except maybe the mile, which I've only done a couple 1-mile races, I've had some bad races. But the thing is, when you have a bad 5K, you just kind of slow down at the end. When you have a bad marathon, usually it's a whole different thing. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more specifically about the marathon, but I think that racing with fear applies to everything. So when I look at the marathon specifically, I've had 2 Chicago marathons, the Kenosha Marathon and the Indy Marathon, with kind of disastrous finishes. Disastrous meaning the last 4, 5, 6, sometimes more miles, lots of walking, way slowing down, not a good place to be, and just, bad races, things not very happy with. So as a result of that, because I've had these bad races, and Indy was actually the last bad marathon, it occurred just before Houston. When I went to the Houston Marathon, I was probably in shape on a good day to run about 3:29. Houston was not a good day. Very warm and humid. I could probably have run about 3:35, 3:37, somewhere in there, adjusting for the conditions. I ended up running about 3:45. So why did I run 3:45? I ran with a whole bunch of other people, and frankly, I am glad I did that. We had a blast. It made it a lot of fun. But one of the reasons I ran that is I was afraid to go after what I could probably do because I didn't want to go back to those disastrous things. I didn't want to have the success, so I dialed back. I feared failing in that race. Let's go back to those races. So why did I fail in those races? Well, maybe I really wasn't trained. In every single case, when I've had a bad race, those marathons, it came down to execution. I did stupid stuff or didn't do something I should have done, which I could argue was stupid. It wasn't that I wasn't fit. It wasn't that I couldn't do that. It's because I did some stupid things, and as a result, I had that bad race, and that makes me kind of run with fear. Now, the most recent race I've had where I didn't run with any fear was the Great Western Half Marathon, which was in May of 2017. So I went into the Great Western Half Marathon. My C goal was to run that in about 1:35. My B goal was 1:34:30. My A goal, if I at all could, was to try and get underneath 1:34. And in that race, I told myself, get my papers loose here, I'm not going to run with fear. And if I have to walk, I have to walk. I am going after whatever I can get on that day. And fact is, failure's an option. Not that I wanted. Now again, that doesn't mean running like an idiot. You've got to have a race plan and execute. I had a race plan, and I did execute that race plan. I'm very happy with how I executed. So what happened? So I had negative splits, which is always a good sign. My first mile was 7:15. My last mile was 6:57. I ran 1:33:30. I blew away my A goal because I was willing in that one race to say, I'm not going to race this with fear. I'm going to do whatever I can do and go after it. And I ended up kind of exceeding my own expectations. Now let's kind of take this back to, I said Boston just took place. So if you haven't heard, depending upon where you are in the world, or maybe when you watch this video, because videos are around forever, the elements in Boston were terrible. It was a terrible day. But anyway, on a good day and a good course, not the Boston course, because Boston's very good. So a good day, a nice flat course, I think I was probably in shape to run 3:25. I think Boston, given the weather that day, given the course that day, I'm thinking I probably could have run somewhere around 3:40 or something on that day. I ran 4:22. And why did I run 4:22? Because my goal was not to run what I was trained and able to run. In fact, it was probably one of the best training cycles I've ever had. My goal was to make sure that I didn't fail. Part of that was because it was Boston, but part of that was because I've realized That's kind of my default. It's how I race. I race not to fail rather than racing to win. So, as I said, this is kind of like to hold me accountable. I'm here to tell you, my next marathon, there will be no fear. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm going to go and run like an idiot. It doesn't mean running outside of myself. It doesn't mean being in shape to run 3:30 and going out and trying to run 3:15. I mean, that's just stupid. It means racing within what I can do and going after it. So I'm going to run smart. I have to execute. I have to realize that failure, in fact, is an option. Not that I want to fail, but that maybe that will happen. But it shouldn't happen if I do everything right and I run smart and I run within inside of myself. I want to race to achieve what I believe I can achieve, not race to be safe. What does that mean for you? Because really these videos should be helping you. I'm not sure. It's a great book, but ask yourself too, do you have any fears? And if you have those fears, what are those fears? And what are you going to do about those fears so that you can race for your own success?